Hi geek girls and punk ass bitches. I'm Kate, and today I want to talk about Life is Strange and why, despite everything, it's my favorite game. At least currently.
Uh-oh.
Life is Strange is a bit of a controversial game because it has received tons of criticism and mockery regarding its bad dialogue and a bit of questionable storytelling, but its all-time review on Steam is overwhelmingly positive, and it's still being played and praised 5 years later. Honestly, when it comes to making why I love videos, I think I want to start talking about things that have more mixed reactions, and to include some of the contrary points as well. I think it makes more sense. If you've clicked on this video, I want to assume you're already familiar with Life is Strange, so I'm not gonna give the general information. Also, spoiler alert and trigger warning for pretty much all the dark things the game deals with. Let's start with the big strokes first. That's the recommended way for storytelling, so I'll take the same approach for the analysis. Fun fact, I wrote my thesis on narrative structure and I talked about the Life is Strange transmedia world for 12 pages, so I would like to think I know what I'm talking about to some bachelor's degree. Life is Strange has the benefit, which is also a disadvantage in some ways, of being largely narrative driven. Because of this, the story specifically is easier to analyze. It's similar to film, an interactive film of sorts, if you will. The game is split into 5 episodes, and the events throughout them fit well with Sid Field's paradigm, which is staple structural framework for feature films. Just a few minutes into the game, you're presented with the inciting incident, Chloe getting shot and Max rewinding, which is an excellent start to a gripping and original story. I have to admit, for a lot of the first and second episode, there isn't a whole lot happening, and because of this, unfortunately, the world didn't see the entirety of Rose and Rosie Life is Strange gameplay, which I still occasionally mourn. But then at the end of episode 2, my name's Sista, Kate takes matters into her own hands, and the drama is on its course to come for us all. For me personally, the midpoint, aka Chloe in a wheelchair, is especially effective, and then the most dramatic moment and worst possible scenario for Max at the end of episode 4 is honestly brilliant. Chloe gets shot again, except this time Max can't do anything about it, and her favorite teacher turns out to be the real criminal. It is so good, and it makes you question, where do we go from here? How can I trust anyone again? How can I trust that anything in my life is in my control? But the game doesn't stop there. Episode 5 is for sure my favorite, with its countless timelines and possibilities of a better life. It's all hopeless though, and I think the game developers brought just the right instruments to illustrate this inevitable doom. Maybe the end is a bit more saturated and messy, which in turn makes the whole story a bit imbalanced, but I can forgive that. I was never uninterested. I think that for a lot of people, Max's superpower is the feature that makes Life is Strange so appealing. It certainly is for me. I mean, if there wasn't this aspect, what would the game even be like?
Get that gun away from me, psycho! No!
The superpower is the reason why specifically Life is Strange and not Before the Storm or Life is Strange 2 is my favorite game. I love the whole story world, but Max's rewind power is the real selling point. I'm always skeptical when it comes to time and space manipulation. There are so many plot holes in every story that deals with it, and Life is Strange is no different. How come the first time Max rewinds time she ends up in the classroom, but other times she stays in the same place? How come her actions haven't been undone? How does she go back in time to when she was 13 and not change absolutely everything in her life? It's a mess, but it's a fun mess.
It started with the hay, lost a creaking, well it just started in the hay. With this long johns on pub when a creeping.
Getting to rewind time is one of the best game mechanics I know. I mean, sure, Max has no way to go back to meet dinosaurs, consciously experience her birth, or save Rachel, but this mechanic allows the biggest freedom in the game. The way that individual players use this ability can be quite telling of their personalities. Did you save Alyssa? Poor girl couldn't catch a break. I'm gonna be talking a lot about symbolism and metaphors because Life is Strange is no stranger to them. And I wrote another paper discussing Life is Strange, this time focusing on coding and metaphors. Max gains her superpower because her childhood best friend has been killed. She didn't know it at the time, but clearly it wouldn't have happened if it was Victoria or something. And for the rest of the game, Max continuously tries to save Chloe from dying when that just seems to be her fate. I'd say that Max's two big struggles in the game are about understanding her own path and personality and making it right, rewinding just enough so everything could be perfect. But that's not life. Nothing ever is perfect. So even with the offer of unlimited time, the game communicates that no, you can't have it all. So you better learn to compromise and prioritize. And if your friend is dying, well then sucks for you, I guess. time to talk about maths. Don't worry, I don't understand enough about the topic to make it complicated. Chaos theory is a branch of maths that studies chaos and nonlinearity, so you can see the correlation with Max's power and the way the story plays out. The most widely known aspect of chaos theory is probably the butterfly effect. The saying of the flapping of a butterfly's wings in China can cause a storm in Texas. Until Dawn also deals with this. They tell the player from the start that every little thing they do can have consequences, and they might be big, and the game delivers more in this aspect than Life is Strange. Here the butterfly effect is less spelled out, but at the same time very literal. Max takes a picture of a butterfly and gains a superpower, and by using it all the time, a storm is coming to the town that she's residing in. It's very on the nose, but I didn't think I realized it for some time, and to me the literal representation makes sense. Now when someone mentions the butterfly effect, I have an immediate picture in my head. And I love that Life is Strange raised interest in me about real-life mathematical concepts. I might genuinely want to investigate further sometime. Okay, this might be the hardest part of the game for me to defend. The characters in Life is Strange are very hard to love. I don't remember much about my first viewing experience, but I guess my 15-year-old brain didn't have much critical thought about anyone's behaviors, so I connected to the characters from the get-go. So now, years later, I think that most characters are quite terrible, but I still have that initial attachment. Max is a very good protagonist both in terms of three-dimensionality and also the choice-based game mechanic. She is unsure of just about everything, so this gives purpose to the player. It doesn't feel like interference into Max's life and her interaction with the world, because she doesn't know who she is yet. She's like this lump of clay that you can mold to your own liking. I personally get annoyed at Max a lot because of two reasons. Her terrible monologue and choice of dialogue, but also relatability. She has to be up there for characters I relate to the most. And I guess Kate too. This will then be my internal dialogue.
You know how humiliating this is for me?
Eat shit and die.
For a Why I Love video, I'm not sure if I should even mention Chloe in the character section because her only redeemable quality is the trauma she's experienced. I mean, how cruel can you be to one person? No wonder she's an asshole. The thing is that she changed so much in between the prequel and the main game that it doesn't make sense. I get becoming sour and bitter after the only light in your life disappears, but she was nothing like that before she met Rachel. And the whole combination of the game is choosing between Chloe and Arcadia Bay, so there clearly must be something captivating to want to save her, but I can't find it. I feel like the game didn't do her justice because in Before the Storm and the comic series, Chloe is cool. I like that person. Okay, but which characters make Life is Strange a more pleasant experience? I love Joyce and Kate and Miss Grant. I think I'm actually more interested in the morally grey and villain characters, just Frank and Victoria. And Mr. Jefferson is such a well-executed character. Unlike pretty much every other story, I don't really care if the characters are lovable. Everyone's just going through some shit. I think the name of the game is very much an understatement. Life is Strange, more like life is insane. As I already said, Chloe has suffered an immense amount of trauma. Dad dying, best friend leaving, mom marrying a douchebag, expulsion from school, girlfriend, or however I can call Rachel, disappearing. And then no matter what she does in her daily life really, she herself is fated to die. And the only way out of her suffering, which would not even erase most of it, would be to destroy her hometown. That is way cray-cray. The game developers have put an immense weight on this one girl's shoulders. So again, it feels like the only way out of this is to let her die. And the most fucked up part is that Chloe represents breaking out of tradition, choosing to be individual, and having queer identity, so the right option would be to go against all of that. Did I choose the Bay over Bay? Yes. But that doesn't make it better. I mean, my explanation is that Chloe was happiest with Rachel, so off you go. But even with all this fuckery, the pain in Life is Strange is one of my favorite parts. I have never been that emotionally involved in a video game. The drama and its arrangement is very effective. Kate's story is so heartbreaking, and it immerses the audience into the narrative. There is the option to dismiss her, but eventually a time comes for you to save Kate, so you better have paid attention. My worst shock the first time around was seeing Chloe in a wheelchair. I think I probably had my mouth open or something. And then you get to meet this completely different Chloe who is actually likable, and yeah, that may up her ratings a little bit. Seeing Chloe die multiple times quickly becomes not so big of a deal, but then being offered to kill her is wowzers. I'm still deeply affected by the Rachel storyline, especially after Before the Storm, and having it play Bros by Wolf Alice in the end, only to be interrupted by that last scene. It breaks me. I love Rachel. I most probably would be in love with Rachel. If there is one good thing that the reviews of Life is Strange agree upon, it would have to be the atmosphere that the game places the player into. I think it does an excellent job in creating an environment that is both realistic and keeping the video game dreamlike vibe. I don't know about you, but I definitely would have liked to go to Blackwell, and I'm hella sad that Arcadia Bay is not a real place that I could at least visit. There's two components that go into the success of the atmosphere: graphics and soundtrack. The graphics, at least the environmental ones, were a big deal when it was first released. I think that everyone I watched was in awe of them. And no wonder, the game is absolutely gorgeous. All the landscapes, personified living spaces, and little details. I want to live inside of it. And the music better be playing in the background too. The Life is Strange soundtrack is the best I know. And that also includes Before the Storm. The pearls that are in the soundtrack. It doesn't matter if it's the calm, everyday type of vibe, the diner, or the party. It's all gold. In Spanish, Sahara by Foles is yet another reason for me to kill Chloe. I'm sorry, love, but that song transports me to another planet. And I don't ever want to come back. Also, parts of the game might have needed more work. The little details and Easter eggs are great. Shout out to Easily Missed Details, Season 1 on the Life is Strange fandom wiki. It's gotta be one of my favorite genders. So with this aspect, I at least get the illusion that so much love and care has been put into the game. Just maybe it hasn't always been applied in the right directions. Some of my favorite details. We've got the classics of foreshadowing, and not just any foreshadowing, the most morbid kind. I think it's pure brilliance for one of the first lines spoken in the game to be a direct hint about Jefferson and the big plot twist that happens later in the story. No one notices that, and I don't think anyone would care about that line in real life either, so it's realistic too. And there's also "You Are About to Die" written on Chloe's truck. Maybe this girl wrote her own destiny. I think there's even more to the butterfly effect. When Max is showing off her powers to Chloe the first time, a cockroach climbs into the jukebox and a new song starts playing. And when Max visits Chloe in the alternate timeline of paralysis, the clock on the wall has been stopped by a ladybug. They're a lot more minor, sure, but there's definitely a pattern of insects having a little too much power for their tiny bodies. It's a bug's life. Another detail that I thought of myself, I don't know, maybe 1,000 other people have come up with this too, is how much Amber Price resemble a Shakespearean story. They already acted out one on stage, but they kind of lived it too. I mean, Romeo and Juliet met, immediately connected, and wanted to leave together, and then in Life is Strange, Chloe dies in the same spot that Rachel is buried. I don't know if it was intentional, but it certainly is interesting. Furthermore, there are things that I would never notice myself, like Warren looking at Max's window right after she wakes up, and Rachel was here changed to Rachel is here, and you're all gonna die added in the end. Also, Frank is afraid. I just found out about this. I've already mentioned quite a lot of the bad qualities in Life is Strange, so with this last segment, I want to try to highlight how some of the flaws have been or could be turned into strengths. Like, what does it mean to be a fan of Life is Strange? The consensus is that it's a game for people who go on Tumblr, and I assume it's mostly intended in a bad way, but I don't see a problem with it. I mean, I've never participated in any discourse and just kept reblogging pretty pictures. I said I was like Max, but I still go on Tumblr, and Life is Strange is still my favorite game. What about it? The most hilarious thing is that I joined Tumblr like a week after the first episode of the game came out. The biggest weakness of Life is Strange is the writing. So I'd like to say it's the best game with the worst writing. And this really doesn't make sense because bad writing should equal a bad story, yet that's not the case. Again, the structure is there and the sequences make sense, so it's more about the dialogue and Max's monologue. It's about the language. It's out of date and cringy, but it brings so much iconic value to the game. Almost every joke about Life is Strange involves the language, so good job. Because it is outdated and doesn't include the current trends, we can distance ourselves from the tragedy that's occurring. When I was looking for all the magnificent words and phrases that the Life is Strange characters utter, I stumbled upon people criticizing Chloe and the game developers for her hypocrisy. She says she believes in gun control, but only when it comes to men, not herself. Then we cue to her shooting herself, Frank, and/or Pompidou. And oh my god, how can she be this way? I hate Chloe. But this kind of hypocrisy is so funny. How can you not get on board with that? It's not that serial. And there's also the limited gameplay, which offers only an illusion of choice. Everything you say will be held against you, except it kind of won't because it doesn't even matter. There's only death or a different kind of death that makes all your actions meaningless. I get it. Games are for being playful and not constricted to four walls. Except most of them are. And Life is Strange in general communicates that your life path is already set for you. You can't have it in your own perfect way. So you better deal with it. When I think back on Life is Strange, I don't think too much about the end result, but more about the events and experiences that happened throughout the story. Max is an avoidant person, so if you as a player don't care about the side characters, she is gonna stay that way, and then you won't care about the game too much. But by making Max break out of her cocoon, the story gains more meaning, and isn't that just what life is? I really need to listen to myself though. I was also gonna include a separate segment for the rest of the story world, but I don't think now's the time. There's certainly a lot of potential for other stories, and the other games prove that. I'm also enjoying the comic because it again brings in a real life concept, this time string theory, and it's fun to entertain more possibilities of different timelines and to see Rachel happy. I hope this has been interesting to watch. Let me know your stance on Life is Strange in the comments. With that, I'm signing off. Shaka bra. If you like this video, click the like button, subscribe for more, and do anything else that your heart desires. Just remember to be nice. Have a wonderful day.